like this. You're going to come in nice and tight and kind of press away from them. That's the same way you want to approach your bench press. So basically, you're nice and tight in here. You're going to press kind of up and back motion. So, or if you're pushing, helping move a car, I guess we can go to something a little less violent. Moving a car, you're going to be leaning into it and then kind of pressing away from it. So, warm up for bench press. This will kind of go for the squat and the deadlift as well. I like to do what I learned from Adrian Larsen. He had the world record bench press in the 220 weight pound class, or 220 weight class, body weight, 585 bench press. Ridiculous. So he's one of my mentors, and he's kind of taught me this alternative warm-up of front loading. So what that is basically you're going to do a series of movements, in this case like a lat pull down and a band face pull for 3 sets of 10 reps. You're basically just trying to get some blood flow into the muscles, warm up that way. It's not going to be fatiguing, but something kind of moderate in intensity and weight, and basically kind of bring some blood to that back. Then following that, he actually has us do a bicep curls and rear delt flies. So again, more muscles that assist in that movement. Same thing, 3 sets of 10. So then when you approach the bench press, you're not going to waste a whole lot of energy getting into that. I mean, we'll go back to that technique. Whole lot of energy getting into this setup for your lightweight. So she's not doing this with the empty barbell and then going up to 95, then going up to 135. She would start basically at maybe 115, like 60% for her. So it's fewer reps or fewer sets actually done in this. The idea basically is don't waste all that energy in the setup. Just get warm and then jump in about 50-60%. I've actually found that to be pretty helpful with the squat and the deadlift as well. Maybe a little bit more on the lighter side, like 50%, maybe even like 45%, but going through some warm-up stuff for that.
So you will not do sets with the bar?
Typically not, yeah. So we'll get into it in a little bit here, the squat warm-up. I'll warm up with box squatting as well. The reason being is I'm practicing technique, and then once I get to my working weight, where maybe I might use my knee wraps, I'll pull the box away and then use knee wraps and then go all the way through. Basically trying to save my low back. So if I do have those reps where I get that butt wink, I don't want to get my low back tight before I actually get to the weight that counts, essentially. So yeah, I kind of skip over the bars. 135, I'll actually start at about 225 when I start squatting. Now there's kind of some stuff that you do ahead of time, which let's actually, Zach, you want to go through some of this really? Okay. Let me see. Let me grab some kettlebells here. So we'll move into back squat. I think for bench press, you guys pretty much know what a lat pull down is, band face pull. Any questions on that at all? Okay. So what do we got here for weight?
You want to go over the face pull technique, Dan? Face pull technique? There's a few ways of doing it.
Yeah. You guys have bands?
Either that or T-Rex. We got Spries right there hanging by.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Dan. You could probably hook up in the rack right there.
Okay, so a face pull.
Just turn that sideways as you pull through. So you can tiptoe.
Yep. Okay.
All those back squats.
Yeah. Get me short, right? Okay, so face pull technique, we're going low to high. Pull it up, basically, ooh, this is pretty tight. We can take a W with the arms, so we're pulling basically above the hairline, right up towards, almost above the face. So that's going to warm up the rear delts, the upper back. And you would superset that with the lat pull down. The rear delt fly, you can use either dumbbells. Actually, well, I got this down here. Another one that I'll use sometimes, more so like in a competition, because you don't have that luxury of having a lat pull down in every competition venue. Take bands there, band pull apart. So we're working the same thing, that upper back and rear delt. That's another one that you can do instead of rear delt flies.
Question.
Yeah.
What's the difference in the face pulls from doing it at the level that you were versus going high to low? Like some people go down on one knee, and come down this way to do it, or from the ground and go up this way?
So we're
Is there a
working,
preference or difference?
Yeah, we're working different angles. So with a low to high, you're getting a bit more of that rear delt. From high to low, you're basically going to use your lats a little bit more dominantly, or a little bit more mid, lower back. So we're trying to target the upper back and rear delts. That's why you go low to high.
Perfect.
Okay, so moving back to squat here. I think what we'll do is we'll take a plate.
Are you having me do goblet squats?
Yes. You good with those weights?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
224s.
Okay. Usually I'd go a little bit lighter with this, starting out. So thanks, Zach.
Yeah.
Zach's a beast.
So,
I will let you walk me through this. I'm blank slate. I've never done this before. What do I do?
okay, so first thing we're going to do is let's talk a little bit about technique on squat, bracing, and then we'll actually get into goblet squat and warm him up for a good squat workout here. So I want you to imagine that there's 1,000-pound bar above you that's going to drop on you in a few minutes here. Okay? Yeah. Maybe we'll say 500. Okay. I got that. So reflexively, you want to be ready to load that weight. So we need to set that core into a good position. So we're trying to get neutral spine here. Yep. So if you just stand tall, our goal here is basically we're going to try to drop your rib cage down, flex this here, and we want, I think, the pelvic floor and the diaphragm to be basically like a cylinder.
Like there is what you
Yes. Yes. So we're anchored down there. He can take some load. He's got basically the most optimal position to get intra-abdominal pressure built, which again is going to get him stronger, or going to allow him to move more weight. So
why wouldn't I arch my back like this?
yeah, so
Some people say arch back, arch back.
a very common error that I see a lot is very hyperextended low back, thoracic spine. We're creating an open scissor basically between your pelvic floor and the diaphragm. So we cannot brace as hard as we can if we're in that neutral position, that neutral spine position. So up here, think of it as like have you guys ever seen a soda can? How you can stand on an empty pop can and it will support your whole body weight. Anybody seen that?
You have a soda can?
Okay, maybe.
Really? That's cool.
Yeah. So that'd be awesome if we had a empty soda can to do that. But okay, maybe two. We'll say so. Set two up, stand on it evenly. It would support your body weight. It's a cylinder. You have a friend, buddy, come and flick it. It's going to provide a dent in that, and it's going to get crushed. So think of that as now related to anatomy here. That whole abdominal cavity is kind of being that same way. We want to be in that optimal position. If we're hyperextended here, our abs can't get quite as tight.
I would not want to catch 1,000 pounds like this. I want to catch it like
No,
that.
that back just hurts even thinking about that. So, well, it does both ways actually. Anyway, yeah. So hopefully that creates a good picture there. So you want to be very stable in here. We actually want to be breathing deep into the system. So what I want you to do is put your hands basically on your side here. We're going to work on dropping your rib cage down. And then I want you to fill up from the bottom here. Good, as deep as you can. You should see his hands expand. You go ahead and exhale. And let's try it again here. So watch his hands as he does this here. So he's expanding 360 degrees here. Breathe in even into the low back here. That is how I want you to take a squat. I want you to prepare for a deadlift. That is going to be the maximum amount of intra-abdominal pressure that you can get. As well as even improving that with a belt. So that's where the belt comes into play. It gives you that external feedback. So, once we got
just feel it here, it's all the way around.
Yes, all the way around. You should be able to actually push out your hands. If you're just getting fat here, that's only part of it. Yeah. So you want to 360 breathing. Okay, so once we go over that with the client, do you guys want a little bit more of a intro on that? How to get somebody to feel that? Let's go through it. Could I have you lay on your back?
Yeah.
We're
doing like wall bugs or something?
That is one idea. Another is this here. I'm going to have you just lay flat.
Okay.
I'm going to rest one of these on your chest.
Okay.
Hopefully it won't fly and hit you in the face.
Luckily it's
Okay, so this, and let me get a chair. And let's go ahead and put your legs up onto here. Oops. Knee bend? Yes, knee bend. Let's go a little bit more, 90 degrees here. Okay. So this is something that you can cue a client. You could even put a towel underneath their low back here to get them to feel it a bit more. So you're going to cue them to basically breathe into this plate and leave this plate alone. So this is where they actually feel some feedback here. I want you to inhale, expand that plate up, and then exhale. So we shouldn't see a whole lot of movement out of this plate. And he's doing a good job right now. He's pressing into this one. Works a little bit better with smaller plates, like 2.5, where you can actually see that movement. These are pretty big, but good. So the other feedback of this would be the towel. It'd be under the low back.
You can see under that.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to see, but if you put a towel underneath there, and as he inhales, he should be pressing that into the floor. So as a coach, you're going to be tugging on that towel. And
you know what you could do? The band, if you put it under, then it's pinned under, and if you pull on it when you have when you're pressurizing, if you have somebody else pull on the band, it shouldn't come out. It should be really pinned under there.
Yeah.
I guess same thing as the towel.
Yeah, exactly. So something where you get that feedback as a coach, you know that they're pressing into the floor. And then you can also cue them for the obliques, basically expand into your obliques. Now you got the 360 breathing. So sometimes it takes putting them into this position to really feel it and to see it. Once they get this though, that is excellent. So time to move on. Okay. Any questions on that?
That's it.
Awesome. Let's warm up for squat. Sorry about that. Alright, so now that we've done some breathing here, we're going to jump into a goblet squat. So this is like I said, a fairly heavy to start. I'd probably suggest maybe a 16 kilogram for most males, maybe a little bit lighter even.
I use 25 pounds.
Yeah, like a plate.
So, yeah,
Would you rather use a plate?
it doesn't matter.
Okay, this is about 50 pounds.
Yeah, I know, but I'm not squatting after, so it doesn't matter.
Okay. So let's go ahead and we'll hoist this up. And I want you to basically just hold this off of your body. Perfect. So that works. And then what we're trying to do is we're going to get into that neutral spine position. So go ahead and lower your rib cage. And I want you to think sit back. So sit in your hips back, keep that neutral spine, and then up here. So we're warming up the squat pattern. I would have him do probably about 10 reps. So let's go ahead and go through that. Now another cue that we want to focus on, we're focusing proximal to distal in terms of cueing. So we're getting that neutral spine first. Now we want to also cue him into hip dominance. So that would be rooting into the floor. So now with these next couple reps, I want you to think of having basically like eagle talons here. Grab the floor and rip it apart. So immediately you should feel your hips turn on. So keep in that position now, we're going to push back into our hips and pull basically your hips forward to get you standing tall. So we got neutral spine set, hips are set, and driving very hip dominant squat. So this warms up the pattern. Again, it's a lower system load here, so we're only working with 50 pounds as opposed to doing like 45 and then 135, 185, kind of building up. So we'll warm up the pattern this way. It's probably
And the weight forces you to keep upright.
Yes.
I can't go forward or lose it.
Yes, that's a great point. So yeah, there's also, this is being self-limiting. If we put 185 on the bar, yeah, you can lower that down. His form might suck. You know, he's warming up doing these with a very back dump, or like leaning forward. So this is going to keep his squat pattern a bit more true to what we want it to be. So we'll start with something like that, warm up the squat pattern. Next we'll go to a single leg stability exercise. Okay. So I like the hip airplanes. How's your balance?
We'll see.
Okay.
Oh, I'll probably have to hold on to something.
Okay, so let's have you just go ahead and lean forward and we'll just do fingertips on this box.
Again, I don't know how to do this.
Yes.
Walk me through this.
So what I'm going to have you do is we're going to plant one foot, flex the glutes on the other leg, lean forward 45 degrees, and for purposes of a beginner, you might have them hold onto a rack or something stable and just try to do
Or somebody with bad balance.
yeah, or with that balance. tell them not to completely hold onto it. So you can do this all day, holding onto like a pole, for example. But we want to build that balance, that stability in that single leg. So we're going to lean forward, 45 degrees, open up the hip, draw the knee to the opposite side, and then the opposite of that, we're going to drop that hip in and draw the knee to the inside here. So we're working the hip through a full internal, external range of motion. Bend forward at 45 degrees.
Don't do that so you can see the knee. That's probably about 45 right there.
This box is probably a little low for him.
Yeah, a little bit.
Try to get, yeah, I think it's just a little bit low. It's causing him to lean forward just a little bit more than 45, but yeah, we go through chair, perfect.
Just knock it over. All right. Is that 45?
That looks better, yeah. So I'll have you do about 5 reps or so on each side. And something like this would be good because you can tell how heavily he's using that chair basically to stabilize, because that's a pretty light object, and if he uses it too much, it's going to topple over. The more advanced or comfortable they get with this, the better. Take the chair away, have them freestanding. You'll notice if there's like a weak point, they'll kind of rush through that range of motion or almost collapse in, or they'll lose balance. So you want to focus in on that point and have them really work through it so they're not just boom, boom, crashing through. So trying to really just groove in some smooth movement.
I have instability in my right hip, and so let's see. You'll see I have a really tough time keeping balanced. There's a lot of the knee kind of wobbles, and so that's kind of, it works as a good indicator of that.
Yeah, definitely. So you can benefit from more of these.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. So following a couple rounds of those, probably 2 sets of 10 on the goblet squat, 2 sets of 5 on the hip airplane there. Then we might actually start loading his squat here. Another exercise that I like to throw in if, say, somebody's really tight in their hip flexors would be a rear foot elevated split squat or a Bulgarian split squat. So that is something we could use a bench. Just hike up 1 foot, drop down in. This is another one that will start with body weight. You might load this slightly. But another one where you want to cue them into stretching that hip flexor. So let's have you go through a set of that as well. So these are just like 3 movements basically that we're going to use with pretty minimal loading before we jump into a squat. I use this also for a deadlift warm-up as well. Instead of Bulgarian split squats though, it might be a single leg RDL with a double kettlebell. So you get a little bit of load on there.
Gotcha. Yep.
Anybody need some? Okay, well, let's go through it.
Single leg RDL with a double kettlebell.
Okay.
So,
24.
yeah, let's just go single kettlebell. That's going to be a little bit more than just warming up. So, we'll see how it balances now. So we're going to go now.
I was going to say, just give me the other kettlebell.
Be a little easier.
Yeah, well, or, I mean, to be fair, I could just use dumbbells.
Yeah, dumbbells will work actually. Let's go with that. Grab maybe some 17s.
Cool.
Yeah, we don't need a huge load here. We're more so just trying to get the hamstring, get some blood flow in it, kind of work a dynamic warm-up essentially. So this one, we're going to press in just like that hip airplane, but we're going to follow all the way down until you feel a massive stretch in your hamstring. So once you kick this back more, there you go, get that glute firing. So this might be something we'll do very similar to the goblet squat, 2 sets of 10 each leg, or maybe 2 sets of 8. Keep them a bit more upright here.
Okay.
So shoulders pulled back, and push back into that hip, just like in that squat.
You want the knee angle to stay pretty fixed then, right?
No, actually. So I want you to, from my side,
Yeah.
you're going to actually try to push back into the hip. So it's going to be very similar to if you had your foot there for deadlift.
Okay.
So I want you to push back into the hip. So
The
if I
hip
actually-
on the leg that I'm balancing on.
Yes. So if I actually guide you in, I'm going to pull this back a little bit. So bend that knee, let it go forward a little bit. There we go. That is tough. Yeah, so we don't need much weight. I mean, it's more the balance that we're getting. So
If you're
from
trying
this,
to get activation out of where?
more the hamstring, the glute. Trying to keep this pretty stable. It should really mimic what we're working that day. So this, for example, like I was saying, instead of the Bulgarian split squat, that might be more of a squat warm-up. This would be more of a deadlift warm-up. So we're warming up those muscles that we are going to do deadlifts with. Another thing that I didn't bring today, a hip circle or a Perform Better band, is another way that we can get the muscles fired up. Just doing some monster walks side to side. It's where it's pretty minimal load on the body.
You want one band or no?
I think everybody generally knows what that is. Band around the ankles or knees. And we're just going side to side, keeping the toes and heels in alignment. One thing that you do want to watch for is that they're not doing this. The knees are coming in. You want to cue them to keep some tension on the band and keep the knees over the ankles. So it's just simple side to side. You might go forward and back, making sure to extend that knee with each step. That would be if the band was up above the knees, so like the hip circle. That is a little bit, for those of you that don't know the hip circle, it's like a mini band from Perform Better, but I think better. It's cost maybe like $25. It's from the Mark Bell, howmuchyabench.net. You're not going to snap that, so it's made from like this elastic material, similar to the slingshot. If you guys don't know what that is, we talk a little bit more about that later. It's a training tool to help you overload. But pretty stretchy material, it won't break like those $5 bands will. So, okay, so once we go through 2 rounds of that, then we have to bring it to the bar. So, let's go over some squat technique. Yeah, we're going to do this,
Just take it out, unless other people do.
Okay, so, are you a high bar or low bar?
I can do any, doesn't matter, whatever
Okay.
you want.
So one of the beautiful things about all of these exercises is the law of individual differences. We are basically all built a little bit different. So working with somebody, you may find that, say I'm going to go back to deadlift here, they're anatomically set up better to do a conventional deadlift than a sumo deadlift. If they can't seem to get in the right position, try the other one. So we'll talk a little bit about deadlift time committing, but let's go through squat. There's 2 different versions of the squat. Let's move this forward here. A high bar and a low bar. Both of these videos here are examples of more of a low bar. I have one from kind of head on and then one from the back here. So you can kind of see the position. It's resting on the rear delts. And it's going to be very hip dominant. So just the same way we were cueing with the goblet squat, trying to sit back into those hips and drive forward. And let's see another one with a little bit better lighting from the back here. Ooh, and some audio. These are both at a powerlifting meet, so you can just hear the energy of the place. You have safety spotters there. The scary part is usually you have to walk out a squat for most federations. So you are freestanding, but you're really trusting your human spotters that they don't mess up. So it could be fun. Definitely. So, okay, let's get into your positioning. So let's go ahead and I'm going to have you set up. We're going to try a mid or low bar position. So we'll go ahead and, actually, we'll take a step back.
I may have to take my hands out to the collars if we go low bar.
Okay. Shoulder mobility or?
Okay, not warmed up.
Okay, yeah. So that's a similar case for me as well. I tend to go wider and then kind of tighten up. Now the question of where to actually put your hands on the bar,
That's
really,
low.
What's that?
That's low bar.
Yeah. Yeah, so see how it's resting basically on his rear delts here. It essentially makes a shelf for him to position the bar. It should almost click in. For females that may not have that muscular build, their elbows are going to be usually a little bit more back to push that in. Probably not optimal, but they're usually a little bit more flexible in their thoracic spine, so they can still stay upright and squat and that's just kind of a gender difference. I'm kind of generalizing. Everybody's going to be a little bit different, so you got to see what works for them. So this is a bit more high bar. He has this more on the traps now. Whatever feels best for you. The low bar, for me, I feel like I could sit back better into the hips. It's more hip dominant in nature. As you can see from the side angle here too, the bar is actually back a little bit further. So when you squat, it's going to sit a little bit further back in his basically center of gravity or center of balance there. So that's why I prefer the low bar. But if they can't get into this position, shoulders hurt with it, try a high bar. They just might be having to hyperextend maybe, but you want to hopefully try to get them out of that. So which one do you predominantly use?
Here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So go ahead and let's cue your squat.
Do you want me to rack it and go through like all the cues unracked, or do you want to go from here? I can do either or.
Let's just go from here now, since we got you in this position. So let's go ahead and same thing with the goblet squat. Excuse me. Let's draw the rib cage down. Get rooted into the floor. And I want you to push back into the hips, and then drive forward. Bam. Okay, so notice the bar path on this. It's staying basically right over his ankles. Maybe he gets a little bit forward to midfoot. But generally he's pretty balanced here. It's going to help with actually a bit more load too to help keep that balance. Or sit back a little further.
I can go here and sit back more.
Alright. So notice as you go wider, when you hit that parallel, you get a little bit more butt wink. So I'd probably actually, probably keep you a little bit more narrow. I think you were talking about that too. You are a bit more narrow stance than
Right there.
the normal. So the butt wink, you may have heard about that. If you watch this low back, it should be that neutral spine. We shouldn't see any tucking under the tailbone.
You don't want this.
Yeah, just right at the bottom there. So that was below parallel. But yeah, over time, that's just gonna, it's pretty low for you, huh? Really wear on your low back, kind of wearing on ligaments and tendons there. So not really optimal. We don't want to have that happen. So try to train without that. For me personally, as I was kind of mentioning earlier, I actually warm up with a box. So I will box squat up until I get basically to my working weight, and then I'll actually start dropping into the hole completely. I'll try to get the box set at parallel, or maybe just slightly above. That is something I picked up from Stan Efferding, watching him, the world's strongest bodybuilder. I forget what I was going to say on that, but one way that you can do it. Okay, any questions on squat? Before we go deadlift?
Why does, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, on that butt lift, do you have any strategies to work with people more like lighter goblet squats to keep them in that neutral spine? Like if they're doing it before parallel and they can't even get to that point?
Yeah.
Any good strategies for working on getting more mobility there?
Definitely. So goblet squat I think is a great way to do it. Lowest system load. We're going to sit back into that pocket a little bit more. Helps to improve that mobility. You may do some mobility drills with them to get them to that point. Hopefully you've kind of seen this with the FMS or any kind of assessment that you've done before, that maybe their squat just sucks and they get maybe, or their depth is not good. Let me back up and say it that way. So yeah, you're going to have to do a lot of prep work before even getting them into that position. That may change the warm-up that you're doing with that person. So maybe you're having them pause that deep squat into a goblet, working side to side here, really trying to find that pocket, find that hole, and improve their mobility before they actually get under a heavier load. You may also have them do, maybe some wide lunges beforehand to really just open up the hips. If they cannot get to parallel, they don't absolutely have to. If you're competing in powerlifting, you do. But that's not to say that you can't build muscle from a half midway squat. I do have a couple clients, like one that comes to mind, he has a degenerative disc disease. So I'm not crazy about getting him down to parallel. I get him down to where he feels comfortable. His goal is basically to improve muscle size and strength, but we're not putting him in a powerlifting meet, so he's actually probably doing maybe half squats. But you look at people like Daniel and Bailey, very popular fitness person, she typically does that as well. She's Miss Olympia runner-up this year, Miss Olympia last year for women's physique. So you can still build an awesome physique by doing half squats, but ideally that we would sit them into parallel through mobility work or over time, get them to that, so we can actually draw in a bit more muscles, including the hips, glutes, hamstrings, and that deeper range of motion. So.
Would you focus on ankle mobility drills to help with that?
Yeah, so that depends. So that is one additional kind of breakout assessment that I like to do. How is your ankle mobility?
Not great on the right, but I can keep my hips in position on the squat.
Okay.
I think the left one is slightly better.
Okay, how about the forward?
It caps out right there.
Okay.
So probably not good, but I don't know what you're looking for in that assessment.
Yeah, pretty much. So what I do is I set them up on the side of a rack or a wall, get them about 2 inches, and I won't necessarily measure, it's more rule of thumb. I will actually pin their heel down and see if they can go beyond their toe and touch the wall or the rack. That is more than enough mobility of what you need, basically, to do a deep squat. I know that whole thing, probably you guys all have heard, knees over the toes is bad news. It's fine if you are keeping your balance basically where it needs to be. So if you're midfoot into kind of sitting back into your hips, knee goes over. You look at Olympic squatters, clean and jerk, they're getting super deep into the hole. Their knees are over their toes. Of course, you have to be strong to be able to do that, but when you start seeing their heels pop up and their knees are over their toes, then that's where you kind of call it there, because that's a lot of pressure into the knee. You're probably doing more harm than good. So, yeah, ankle mobility does take into account. You could do a joint by joint assessment, or if you can see that they can't get into that position, yeah, try to break it out into those techniques. Maybe there's one, maybe do a split lunge, same. Try to figure out where the joint is and what makes it work.
That line.
That's true.
I mean,
Would that have to do with glute activation? The butt wing?
Glute activation, yeah. So when you're cueing somebody to really rip the floor apart like that, that should turn on their glutes, should turn on their hips. So that is controlling it a little bit more. It's kind of an anchor from the low back, as opposed to just kind of passively dropping in the hole. You'll probably see that butt wing pop up again. So really make sure that they're still using those hips, keeping that neutral spine throughout.
Butt grip, hand grip. Zach, you see that he wasn't using a thumb around the bar.
Yeah, so different individuals. Again, we're all different. So what I like to do, I actually don't use a thumb grip myself. I have pretty crappy shoulder mobility. I'm not going to do this one on camera. It's horrible. But the shoulder mobility test on the FMS. I would like to cue you into basically, you want to get the lats involved with your squat. So a great way to have somebody do that is, let's just have you stand here, Zach, and one arm out like you, actually, come out here a little bit, okay. So come out here like you're standing strong, get that brace technique like you're about to sit into a squat, arms up like you have a bar. So I'm going to cue him in, basically engage your lat. So fire this here, actually pull down and pull my arm. There you go. Where does it feel strongest to you? Basically,
right where it is.
Yeah. Right where it is. So he has his already set. But you'll see some, I think, I could be wrong on this, so if anybody knows, you could correct me. I think Ripito teaches as narrow as possible, possibly.
the whole,
Like Andre Milanic type squat where you're in here.
Yeah, hand grip as narrow as possible. I think that's a missed cue. It should really be individual to where is the strongest position that you can pull your lats in there. So lats are a huge dominant exercise, or dominant muscle, excuse me, of the back, which actually tie into the low back. So that's going to help you to keep tighter thoracic spine and basically just tighter overall. So you're going to help increase the pressure. So think of it like a lat pull down. Where do you lat pull down the strongest? And that is essentially where you want to bend that bar over your back while maintaining that arch. So usually with a lat pull down, especially bodybuilding, you kind of cue that thoracic extension. This time you're kind of pulling in, keeping a little bit tighter, and then the bar's behind your back. Not so much like the lat pull down, but so lat engagement there.
Which usually probably you'll see bigger guys with a wider grip and
Yes.
smaller people with a narrower grip.
Yes, that's typically the case. Depends on mobility as well as I think size. The thumbless grip I think is fine for most if they can stabilize the bar that way. So usually that's the case with people that have those rear delts that can build basically a shelf to put the bar on, where they can still, I mean you can lat pull down and engage your lats really well without grabbing the bar. It actually probably works better just because you're not over engaging your the forearm muscles. That is something too with, I'm just getting kind of warm here. Overuse. So a lot of people who do powerlifting pretty regularly might get tendonitis in the elbow. So that is another thing that you're just squeezing back here. Look at the angle. You're really stressing. When you get that tight, it's kind of, okay, I can't just turn this off and think lats when I've got my thumb around there. I'm gripping that bar. So that's another thing that can cause that overuse, that tendonitis in the elbows. So actually releasing the thumbs and pulling through the lats, it basically disengages that elbow or the forearm flexions there. So, but have better luck with people who are getting elbow tendonitis with that as well. Okay, move on to deads.